We're headed in a new direction. My name's Curtis Bell. I'm 48. I spent 2 decades at Hollowgate Systems, Phoenix's largest residential builder. I handled subcontractor compliance across every build between Scottsdale and Tempe. My job was to confirm electricians had valid licenses, plumbers followed the code, framers didn't cut corners. It was the kind of work that kept houses standing and lawsuits at bay. Then came Jacob Morrison, the new VP, standing behind my desk like it was already his. Fresh off a flight from some high-rise office in Denver, likely never swung a hammer in his life. His suit probably cost more than my guys made in a week. "We're looking for innovative leadership," he said, eyes not meeting mine. "Someone who understands modern efficiency." I knew what that really meant. Someone willing to ignore the rules and call it progress. Someone who'd hire cheap and hope for the best. Someone who'd smile and nod when Jacob talked about cutting down the permit approval process. "I understand," I replied, because pushing back wouldn't change a thing. 2 decades of spotless safety records, no violations, recognition from city officials, none of it mattered. The new guy wanted a friend in my seat. His friend? Trevor Banks, 34, MBA, 0 construction experience. Jacob paraded him around like he was some kind of savior. Trevor had smooth hands and a vocabulary full of corporate jargon. I spent the day packing up my code manuals, notes, contractor files. 20 years of knowing which electricians were dependable, which plumbers were always on time, which framers actually followed blueprints. All of it fit into a few boxes. HR shook my hand on the way out. As I walked to my truck, I passed the Sunrise Hills project. 3 homes at various phases. Lot 12 had the foundation down. Lot 9 was halfway framed. Electrical rough-in for Lot 6 was next. I'd overseen that site for 8 months. Knew every trade, every schedule, every inspection. Now Trevor Banks would be stepping in. I sat in my truck watching the sunset over the mountains. For 20 years I'd been up at dawn, heading to job sites, making sure homes were built safe, built right. Homes where families could live without worrying about fires or floods or structural failure. Now some MBA kid would be signing off on work he didn't understand. Jacob would push for speed and lower costs. Inspections would become optional. I started the engine and headed home, but I had a bad feeling. This wasn't going to end well. I'd joined Hollowgate right after trade school, climbed from assistant project manager to compliance lead to supervisor. Learned from the old school guys, people who knew that cutting corners in construction was like cutting corners in surgery. Sooner or later, someone pays for it. My father was a union electrician for 37 years. He drilled the rules into me. Every wire you approve could kill someone's kid, he said. Every shortcut can destroy a life. I met Claire, my wife, on a job site in 2009. She was a city inspector and caught a plumbing code issue 3 others had missed. We argued about it for 20 minutes before I realized she was right, and I was a fool. 8 months later, we were married. Our daughter Rebecca is 15 now. Sophomore. Volleyball player. Wants to study engineering. She grew up on job sites, asking smart questions about support beams and circuits. She understood why the work mattered, and that made me proud. The warning signs came early. Jacob started in February. His first questions were about processes. Why get 3 electrical bids? Why not stick with 1 plumber for every job? Why were inspections so drawn out? I tried explaining. Code compliance wasn't red tape, it was safety. Reliable trades cost more because they did things right. Inspections caught errors before they became disasters. He nodded while I spoke, but his eyes said he was calculating costs, deadlines, margins. The first serious red flag came in April. He wanted me to revisit a contractor rejection I'd made. The guy had a license, barely, but his work? Sloppy. Loose wiring. Bad grounding. Junction boxes wired like a drunk apprentice had done them. Maybe we're being too rigid, Jacob said. People deserve second chances. I stood firm. Found another electrician, cost $800 more, but knew how to wire a panel. Jacob signed off, but I saw him writing a note in his file. By June, he questioned every choice I made. By August, Trevor was copied on every email. Trevor asked clueless questions, but Jacob acted like he was grooming a future leader. Only Bill Santos, senior project manager, seemed to notice. He'd been with Hollowgate longer than anyone, back when violations could shut down a company. Watch your back, Curtis, he warned me in July. They're looking for an excuse. He was right. 3 days after Trevor officially took my job, I was clearing out my last drawer when Claire called from the city permitting office. Curtis, are you still working on Sunrise Hills? No, why? Because someone just filed a contractor change order. It swaps Martinez Electric for Valley Wire Services, and it lists you as the approving supervisor. My blood ran cold. I never approved that. Well, the signature looks like yours. I drove straight to City Hall. Claire pulled up the documents and turned the screen. There it was. My signature, or something close. The change order requested replacing Martinez Electric, who I'd worked with for years, with a company I'd never even heard of. Run their license number, I said. Claire did. Her face fell. Their license was suspended 6 months ago. Violations for bad installs, skipping permits. She didn't finish. And they worked without a licensed supervisor. Their owner, Danny Vance, lost his master's cert in 2021. We stared at each other. Someone forged my name to hire an unlicensed contractor. Claire printed everything, the change form, the license suspension, the violation history. I tucked it into my jacket. Driving back, I thought about Lot 6. Electrical rough-in was scheduled. If Vance was wiring, he'd be running lines inside walls that would be sealed in days, work that would stay hidden. Families would live in those homes. Kids would sleep in those bedrooms. And the guy doing the electrical had lost his license for dangerous practices. I parked outside Hollowgate and watched through the window as Trevor paced around on the phone, probably pretending he understood the job. Jacob wanted to cut costs. Trevor wanted to play supervisor, but they'd crossed a line. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about people's safety. I turned the key and headed for the state licensing board. The registrar of contractors' office was in a dull government complex 20 minutes away. I'd been there plenty for classes, renewals, seminars. Never to report my own employer. Margaret Torres ran compliance. Tough, sharp, no nonsense. She listened as I explained, reviewed the fake signature, ran the license numbers. You said you were removed from the project 3 days ago? Officially, yes, but that form is dated yesterday. She took notes. How long has this new guy been in the field? He hasn't. Business degree. No construction experience. And he either approved this or forged my name to fake it. Margaret leaned back. 27 years of catching corner cutters had trained her instincts. When one part's rotten, others usually are. Curtis, she said, here's the deal. This triggers an automatic inspection. If we find unlicensed work, we red tag the site. Everything stops until it's corrected. How long does that take? Depends. A few days if it's just paperwork. Could be months if walls have to come down. I imagined Jacob's face when the state showed up unannounced. Trevor trying to explain his decision-making. There's one more thing, Margaret added. If we confirm serious violations, we may hire you as a consultant to bring the site into compliance. She handed me the complaint form. I signed, my actual signature this time. How soon might the inspection happen? Could be tomorrow. Could be next week. We don't give notice. I drove home thinking about the timeline. If Vance had already started, he was probably halfway through Lot 6 wiring. That meant hidden, permanent, non-compliant work. Claire was grading papers in the kitchen when I got back. She taught electrical engineering at the community college. Knew the rules inside out. How'd it go? I told her everything, the forged signature, the complaint, the inspection, the possibility of consulting work. You think they'll find violations? I think Trevor Banks couldn't ID a live wire if it zapped him. And Jacob? He only cares about savings. She looked up. You could have walked away. Let them deal with the mess. I could have, but you didn't. No. She returned to her papers, smiling faintly. 20 years of marriage taught her to recognize the look I had when I'd been pushed too far. My phone buzzed. Text from Bill Santos. Heard Trevor brought in Valley Wire for Lot 6. You know them? I replied, looking into it. Word was getting around. Other managers were starting to double-check everything, starting to get uneasy. Trevor Banks was about to learn construction was a tight-knit world. Reputation mattered more than any degree. The call came at 6:30 a.m., 2 days after I filed. Margaret Torres. Her tone calm. Professional. Curtis, we need you at Sunrise Hills in 1 hour. Bring everything. I got dressed quickly, grabbed the folder of paperwork Claire had printed out, and drove through the desert morning light, running through possibilities of what the inspectors might have uncovered. When I pulled into the Sunrise Hills development, it was already alive with movement. 3 state vehicles were stationed at different lots. Inspectors roamed with clipboards and cameras, documenting everything. Margaret was waiting at the site trailer. Inside, Trevor Banks sat stiffly across from 2 compliance officers, looking like a man who had just realized business school hadn't prepared him for this level of scrutiny. Curtis, we need you to verify some details, one officer said. Our records show you approved Valley Wire services for electrical work on Lot 6. The contractor claimed you also signed off on Lots 9 and 12. My stomach tightened. Lots 9 and 12 hadn't been part of the original complaint. If Trevor had hired Danny Vance for more than one house, this was worse than I'd imagined. I never approved Valley Wire for anything, I said. Didn't even know the name until 3 days ago. Margaret laid 3 sets of documents on the table, each bearing a signature that looked like mine, approvals for Valley Wire to handle rough and electrical work on multiple lots. The dates spanned 2 weeks, including after I'd been pulled from the job. Well, said Inspector Rodriguez, a veteran with 2 decades of site work under his belt, the plot thickens. He explained they'd found active electrical installs at all 3 sites, no permits, no oversight, and a worker who couldn't show a valid license. Trevor finally spoke. I was told the contractor was licensed. I reviewed the documentation myself. What documentation? Margaret asked. Trevor fumbled through his folder and produced a photocopied electrical license. The number matched Danny Vance's, but someone had altered the expiration date from 2021 to 2024 by hand and duplicated the doctored copy. Where'd this come from? Asked Rodriguez. Danny gave it to me, said the online database might be slow updating his renewal. I almost felt bad for Trevor, almost. He'd been duped by a suspended electrician and had walked right into it. But that pity disappeared when I thought about the families who nearly moved into homes with illegal, dangerous wiring. Rodriguez handed me a hard hat. Curtis, we need you to walk these properties with us. Tell us what you see. Lot 6 was a mess. Boxes mounted improperly, mismatched wire gauges, sloppy splices wrapped in tape instead of proper connectors. Danny Vance had been posing as a licensed electrician with none of the skill. Lot 9 was worse. The panel installation violated half a dozen codes. Circuits were overloaded. Grounding was a joke. The whole service entrance looked like a DIY job gone wrong. Lot 12 was incomplete, but already showed the same signs, cut corners, and glaring violations. How long to bring this up to code? I asked Rodriguez. Best case, 6 weeks, if we find qualified electricians. Worst case, tear everything out and start fresh. Margaret jotted notes as we talked. 3 houses red tagged. Work stopped. Contractor referred to the state ag for unlicensed work and forged documentation. She turned to Trevor. You're suspended from approving any electrical work while your training and qualifications are reviewed. Trevor's eyes widened. His first week as supervisor might also be his last. Back at the Hollowgate office that afternoon, the mood had shifted. News of the inspection, red tags, and investigation had spread fast. Behind a closed door, Jacob Morrison's voice echoed, probably explaining to corporate how a project got shut down. Bill Santos met me at reception, grinning like he'd won a jackpot. Curtis, you genius. How'd you know? Know what? That Trevor's guy was a fraud. Whole office is buzzing. I kept my face neutral. Just heard about it this morning. Shame, really. Bill nodded, but his look told me he wasn't buying my poker face. 24 years in construction had trained him to spot the difference between dumb luck and strategic setup. They want to talk to everyone involved in the Sunrise Hills approvals, he said. You'll probably be on their list. Happy to help if they ask. An hour later, Margaret called. The state was forming a remediation team to determine the extent of the damage and what needed to be redone. They wanted an experienced compliance supervisor to consult. $300 a day plus expenses, she said. 6 to 8 weeks, depending on what we uncover. I did a quick mental tally, $18,000 minimum, more than I'd made in 3 months. And I'd be working with state inspectors, not MBA grads, guessing at code. When do I start? Monday. Be at the site trailer by 7 a.m. When I got home, Claire was making dinner. Rebecca helped prep vegetables, chatting about volleyball practice as if life hadn't just been turned upside down. The state wants me to consult on the Sunrise Hills cleanup, I said. How long? 6 to 8 weeks. It pays well. Rebecca looked up. So the people who replaced you messed up? Language, Claire warned, though she was smirking. Yes, I said. They messed up bad. Good. I never liked that Jacob guy. He was rude at the company picnic. Smart kid. She'd seen what I hadn't wanted to admit. Later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text read. Curtis, it's Danny Vance. Need to talk about the inspection. Can we meet? I showed Claire. The unlicensed guy wants to chat? Looks like it. You gonna meet him? Probably not, but I'll forward it to Margaret. I sent her the message with a note. Contractor using my forged signature wants contact. Thought you should know. 5 minutes later, her reply. Do not meet him. Screenshot everything. Forward all future contact. This may be witness tampering. Witness tampering. That hadn't occurred to me, but it made sense. Danny wasn't just trying to salvage a gig. He was trying to stay out of jail. Trevor had been conned. But Jacob Morrison had created the perfect storm for the con to thrive. And both were about to learn that cutting corners in construction has consequences no spreadsheet can hide. By Monday, I'd be back at Sunrise Hills, but this time working for the state. Sometimes the system works. 3 weeks later, the meeting happened in Hollowgate's main conference room. Corporate from Denver, lawyers in suits, insurance reps with laptops calculating the damage. Jacob Morrison sat at the far end, pale and tense. Trevor wasn't present, terminated the day after HR discovered he'd lied about his credentials. Margaret presented the state's findings. 3 homes with serious electrical violations. 14 code breaches, forged signatures, no oversight for more than 2 weeks. Estimated cost to fix it all, $430,000. And, Margaret added, this case has been referred for prosecution, contractor fraud, and forgery. I sat in the corner, officially a consultant, unofficially enjoying Jacob's grimace as the numbers landed like punches. A corporate lawyer asked the obvious, how did this happen? Margaret opened my file. Curtis Bell, former supervisor. 20 years, 0 violations, multiple commendations. Replaced by someone unqualified who failed to verify licensing and approved fake documents. Jacob tried to chime in. We were implementing new efficiency protocols. You were cutting corners, Margaret cut him off. And 3 families nearly moved into homes that could have killed them. The insurance rep typed furiously. $430,000 in costs, plus legal exposure, buyer lawsuits, and damage to Hologate's bond credibility. The state recommends Curtis Bell oversee all remaining phases, Margaret concluded. He knows the project, the violations, and has the trust of the inspection team. All eyes turned to me. 3 weeks ago, Jacob pushed me out for being too rigid. Now the state demanded I come back. The lawyer asked, would you resume as a consultant? With direct reporting to the state team, I replied. Jacob flushed but didn't argue. They needed me, and everyone knew it. 6 months later, I was drinking coffee in my new office when Bill stopped by. I'd been hired full-time as Regional Compliance Director, 3 projects under my authority, and a pay raise that made everything worth it. Margaret called, Bill said. Danny pled guilty, 6 months in county, 3 years probation, lifetime ban on electrical licenses. And Trevor? Selling insurance in Tucson. Resume skips those 2 eventful weeks. Jacob lasted a month post-investigation. Corporate realized his shortcuts cost more than my whole salary. Turns out, not all efficiency is created equal. Claire brought Rebecca to visit that afternoon. She was impressed by the view. Dad, she said, my engineering professor says people who fix problems get promoted more than people who avoid them. Smart professor. She also said revenge is best served with documentation and state compliance. I laughed. She didn't say that. No, but she should have. On the drive home, I passed Sunrise Hills. 3 families lived in those homes now, homes we'd made safe. Every wire, every connection, every circuit tested and certified. Doing things the right way takes longer, but it always works.